right, let's talk about particles and how particles can interact with the render targets in the Prismatiscape plugin. So if we hit play and we run over this direction, we can see that we have some leaves, some leafses. And these leaves are interacting with two of our render targets. They're interacting with the input render target. So when I just move over or fall down in the leaves, they're going to be pushed around. And they also interact with the wind render target. So if we click on the leaves and we go into this leaf test Niagara particle system, you can see that this is a very simple, this is like one of the default Niagara templates called blowing particles. And the only thing that I've added is the Prismatiscape add render target as velocity. This one's just a renamed version of that. So if we disable them for now that I've disabled those interaction thingos, you can see that these leaves are not, they don't care about me at all. So if we go back to our leaf thinger, what we want to do is on particle update, we want to get the Prismatiscape add render target as velocity. So if we type in Prismatiscape or Prisma or whatever, we're not going to see anything. We need to click on the plugins, show all in plugins. Then we're going to see the Prismatiscape add render target as velocity. Now there are a lot of parameters over here. So we're going to go through them together. So the additional lift Z means for each sideways velocity, how much up velocity do we want? Then we've also got the height fall off, which means how far away from the ground do we want these to react. So if this was like 10, so as soon as the particle gets 10 units off the ground, it's going to stop being affected by this entire module. So the default is 200, which works for wind. But for, actually like when the character touches the leaves and stuff, you might want to put this down to like 50 or something. Then the height RVT, you need to explicitly set that to the Prismatiscape landscape height. That is what it's going to base this height fall off on. The input velocity clamp is just going to clamp the velocity so that if something moves, over the particles at like 1,000,000 miles an hour, it's not going to move them 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's going to clamp it to 400 units per second or something. Now, the render target section means which render target do we want to be sampling from. So if we get the input RT, Prismatiscape deform input RT, we're just going to set that for now. The render target size world space, and below that we have the render target location and the render target size world space. Now you'll be able to find values from the Niagara parameter collection. So if we go to NPC, then we'll see Prismatiscape Niagara param collection. We want to get the deform RT location for the render target location. And for the render target size, we want to get the simulation size world space. This is just so that it knows how to line up the render target in, the correct place. Then the strength XY is just how much do we want to push as like a multiplier. Now, one thing to just check is that this is in the right place. We want to put this before all of the wind and aerodynamic drag and collision and all that kind of stuff. Then we're going to hit compile. And now when we start running over the leaves, they should get... Okay, they're getting like absolutely yeeted. That's because we set the multiplier to like 4,000 or something. And the input render target isn't normalized. So it's actually displaying absolute velocity values. So maybe we want to not do that. Maybe we want to have the strength XY at like 100 or something. It's still yeeting pretty hard. It's mostly going up because we set our lift to like 500. So let's go back again. And we can just tweak around with it, put the lift to like 100. They should just be yeeting around. at like a nice controlled amount. It's a little bit exaggerated, not super realistic, but you can imagine like a scene of like, you know, kids and stuff playing, like jumping in the leaves, and the leaves are going everywhere. So that's one way that we can read these render targets. We could also use the wind instead of the deform. So we go wind RT, Prismatiscape wind RT. The strength XY, we probably want to put a bit higher because the wind is normalized. So the wind is limited to -1 to 1 values. Input velocity clamp, probably not super relevant for the wind. The height fall off, we would want to be taller for something like the wind. And the additional lift, let's put up to like 200 or something. And we would also want to change the deform render target location to wind RT location, just so that it lines up absolutely perfectly and there's no like jitter. All right, so now we're sampling from the wind render target, and you can see when we blow them around, they are very slowly moving away from us. Let's set it way higher. Let's go like 10,000 XY and like 5,000 in the air. So a lot of setting up particle interactions will require some trial and error. But once you get it in that sweet spot, everything is fantastic. Oh, look at that. They are getting absolutely blown away. Now you can see that when they are really high up in the air, like these ones, then they're not going to be affected by the wind, and that's why we get some being left behind, which is a nice effect. That's because as they go up in the air, they're going to stop getting pushed sideways by the wind. Oakley McDoke, let's look at one last little thing that you might want to do with particles and stuff. You can see when I do the water, the water does the particles. So the particles like follow the surface of the water. So the way that this is achieved is actually not through the use of particles at all. So none of this logic of them moving on the water surface is done in the particle system. It's actually done in the particles material. So if we go to Prismatiscape content, we go to the Niagara stuff, we go to the test leaf particle, and see that I've added a little bit of stuff right here. So all this is doing is it's sampling the water height map, so the ripple height map. We're multiplying it by the same amount that we multiply our ripples by on our water. So you just have to make sure that they match up the same. And then we're just applying a mask that essentially senses, is the particle close to our water height RVT? So this little bit of logic is essentially saying if they are the exact same, then do this jiggle well position offset. And then as they get 15 units above or below the water, stop doing this. And then that just gets applied to the well position offset of the particle material. So it's essentially just a trick. You know, everything in life is a trick, and never trust anyone, not even yourself, especially not people that are peddling their graphical interaction plugins on YouTube. So there you go. That's how you can make particles interact with the water ripples and whatnot. So that pretty much sums up how particles can interact with the Prismatiscape plugin at the moment. There may or may not be more interesting ways that I come up with in the future, or that maybe you come up with. I hope you enjoyed that one. This was a nice little short one, but hopefully it clears up a few questions. So thanks for watching, and with that, we say goodbye.